We're going to have an interesting discussion about the buzzword that everyone's talking about, right? What is this thing called omnichannel? Why is everyone talking about it? How is it relevant, and sort of how does someone crack this part of the business? I built a business that actually never did anything offline, but I built a business in a different era. We sold the business in early 2021. So I'm actually not the expert, and the people on the panel are, and so I'm going to try to deep dive with them and break through this term and hopefully add some value to you guys on how we can approach this term, right? So, look, we went through a phase where pretty much everyone started believing, or a lot of us started believing, and I drank the Kool-Aid, that everything will be consumed online. I remember having a conversation with both Vedang and Tarun when everything had shut down, and pretty much sales had gone to zero in anything but the online channel. And then we went through this journey where online ramped up, all of us had crazy growth, and then eventually things started opening in mid-2022, and consumers went back to their old habits. I remember putting up a LinkedIn post saying, I buy 99% of everything I do online. Who's ever going to buy anything offline? And I think reality has hit us now. Right? Consumers have gone offline, and we're now at a sort of interesting juncture where consumption is happening on both places. Now, Vedang, we are called D2C founders in some sense, right? And so the question I wanted to ask you, because you guys have a significant presence in the offline space and your EBOs are some of the best performing stores in the country, is D2C a mindset or is it a channel? Like, how do we think about this? Because we are D2C brands, but now we are selling offline as well.
So, firstly, there are two buzzwords that we've used. One is D2C and the second is Omnichannel. When we started this business, no one told us we were D2C. Then sometime after some years, some investors started saying, y'all are D2C and we want to invest in D2C. I said, okay, we are D2C. Then we already had a couple of stores and I'll tell you the journey of why we started a store. It's because everything was online, and I got really scared that, if Mark Zuckerberg and all change their minds about Facebook advertising, we'll shut shop. So we were like, maybe we should look at billboards. And then the cheapest billboard was actually a store on Linking Road. That was the first store, because billboards were really expensive. So that's how we started our first store. It did really well. And then we started our offline journey. And then people started saying Omnichannel is in. And then we were like, yeah, we are Omnichannel. So I feel like a lot of what you have to do for your business and what's correct. Trends will come and go. But a lot of these buzzwords are extrapolated on already past success. So what I mean by this is, now today we are an Omnichannel business which is doing well. And we are D2C as well. So now they will, like people who see hundreds of businesses, which are usually investors, will say, we want to invest in an omni-channel business. Because they're seeing that online businesses have a cap on growth or something of that sort. Where your question comes in on, is this a channel or a mindset? I think it's a channel. We are actually more than 85% D2C. Even our offline journey is our own stores. So we directly talk to consumers. We own the whole life cycle of the customer. We make sure that we have very high repeat. If you don't have repeat, that's another strong arc that I believe in. If you don't have repeat, you don't have a business. So, yeah. You guys want to take this?
So Arjun, the question that you had asked, is D2C a mindset or is it a channel? We all know it is a channel, but now it has become a mindset for all of us. A lot of people are talking about D2C, but I think this business already exists since 100 years ago, and that's the same thing that we all are doing. We started predominantly online, where we got a particular scale. We really catered a lot of customers in the online world. And then we understood that after a particular scale, we will also have to have more channels of distribution. And that's where we have started opening our stores. So Candere as a brand, we have opened few stores in the offline. We have understood the economics there also. And now we are planning to open massively a lot of stores in the offline world. So I think a lot of online brands have achieved a success till a particular level in the online. And as soon as the cost of acquisition starts going up for all of us, we really think, how can we capitalize the same traffic in the offline? And that's where we start opening stores. And the customers who are coming online, they also come offline, because definitely on weekends people are either at malls, they are at high streets, and we need to be there where our customers really are there. So that's the only thing that we are doing. I think this is being there in the industry since long. There is a new term to it, that is D2C, that we all are calling. We are calling it omnichannel, but we all are there where our customers are. So I think it's more of a customer-centric word that we really want to follow now.
Yeah, interesting takeaway there on being where your customer is. I have a different question for Tarun actually. We had this discussion 2 weeks back in Goa about the offline journey. And look, I know your brand started as a digitally native brand, and at some point with the scale you've reached, you've now actively started thinking about offline. The question I get from a lot of people is, for a digitally native brand, when is the right time to go offline? How does one sort of traverse this journey? Because thought process is very different, way of doing business is very different, structure of business is also very different. And how do you sort of move from this digitally native mindset with a different way of doing business to offline, since you're going through the journey live right now?
So first of all, thank you so much for inviting. I think if there are two parts to the questions. One is, when do you go offline, and how do you kind of think about going offline? So I think we are in a space where we don't build our own distribution. So we don't set up a store, right? We use somebody else's distribution or stores for penetration, right? If that's the philosophy of going offline and not creating your own distribution, when I say creating your own distribution, it means you set up your own stores, figure out the entire operations around projects, and do the selling full funnel of the consumer. But in a category like beauty and personal care, where it's hard to get the economics right because of the number of SKUs you're dealing with, one of the important metric which we figured out largely after doing a lot of iteration was that the share of voice of the brand in your own category has to cross 30. So for example, if Dove in our category is, let's say, 87, it makes all the sense, because for the last 20 years, they've kind of created such a strong brand and distribution that it makes sense for them to be in pretty much 9 out of 10 stores, right? But for a brand like us to even have a right to exist in somebody else's store, we should have at least crossed 30 ka share of voice, which essentially means out of 100 people, broadly 30 people would know your name. So if they know your name, they can recognize when your pack is lying on the shelf. So that's, and broadly in terms of revenue, you can reach to, if you're not doing trading revenue by just kind of keep on launching product on marketplaces and discounting and selling it, if your revenue is decently, decently quality revenue, 100 crore ke aaspas, you can have a right to go to some stores. Now, how do you find some stores is a different thesis. Now, how to think about offline? Entirely different mindset. You'll have to think about somebody going, there's a single person who is going 8 hours on road to 40 stores per day. So think about the kind of constraints this person will have. 8 ही घंटे हैं, 12 किलोमीटर हैं, 40 स्टोर देखने हैं. So the DNA of the organization changes like 180 degree. It is not like online wherein if I am present in one state digitally by Facebook, I can replicate it across 25 other states, right? It's not going to happen. So offline is extremely compounding business. धीरे धीरे रोज 40 stores, 12 kilometer, 8 घंटे, you need to constantly keep on doing it till the time you achieve a critical mass, so that your cost of sales starting making sense. And hence offline DNA should be the priority while building offline business first. So you'll have to first create the DNA and then probably go to the business. So that's the take.
I think, while Tarun was talking about this, Vedang asked me a question as to why we didn't go offline at Dr. Vaidya's. And the reality was, we started offline in October 2016. In 3 months, we put the product out. We had 6 distributors in Bombay, 10 lakhs of stock in the market. And then 3 months later, when we went to collect the money, we got 9 lakhs back, because of the specific point that Tarun mentioned, right? Which is, when we started as an offline brand, we had no share of voice in GT against Dabur, Patanjali, Imami, Baidyanath, Zandu, Himalaya. Nobody bought our product. We didn't have the money to market. And so we had to come back or go back, as opposed to if I was to go today to the offline channel, maybe I would have had a better right to win and better terms of trade as well when the brand was slightly known, right? So I think that was a big takeaway from Tarun in relation to thinking about share of voice, right? He said a very important point on share of voice. I wanted to sort of move to the next question now on differentiation, right? I think there was a time in 2016 when we started, or 2013 when Soulsaw started, where there were fewer brands doing innovation and the market was smaller, but the competition was also not as high, right? Today, given the sort of availability of enablement products, warehousing, logistics, CRM, WhatsApp automation, etc., starting a business or starting a brand is not as difficult, right? So my question to you, Vedang, is, you talked about repeats, but what about differentiation in a cluttered marketplace? Not for you, because you guys have been around for the last decade, right? And so there was a lot of brand love built over the last decade. But for a new founder today, how do you think about differentiation, and how should they think about differentiation when they're entering the market today in 2023?
So it's a very fundamental question, actually. I think there are 2-3 points to this. One is differentiation isn't very hard if you have clear intent. What I mean by this is, where people fail is they try to make a product that many people like. No, you should make a product that some people love. Don't go after, our country is so big. The janta is the biggest dividend we have. For anything you do, there'll be a ton of people, however specific and niche it is. Look at Dream 11. It's a very specific and niche product, which eventually went, but everyone loves it. So don't try and just be general anyway. And if you have a very strong intent on something, you probably have a very specific use, and I think you will find it. Differentiation isn't really that hard. And if I try and engineer it, then it's not going to be different anyway, I think the second point here is that a lot of people don't believe in having patience in building their brands. Do what you're doing differently. The first 1-2 weeks, though, obviously, all your friends and family will purchase, and it's pretty much out of pity. But over time, once the word spreads, people start using your product. When you're truly different, you will win. Why are D2C brands doing well anyways today? Because before you could only buy the Doves of the world anyway, and there was no other choice. But now there is a very clear differentiation that Tarun has built, and people who want that will go for that. And at no point is he trying to now compete with Dove and make another milk product, and then compete with, any Dettol, and then try and say Kitano Itna Nash. He's just going exactly what he is. It's a very niche proposition, but it has a large audience. So just be niche in your proposition. The audience is anyways large. That's what my thought is.
I think the point you said on build a brand that some people love instead of everybody likes, I think that's a deep learning, right? Because from those first 1,000 customers come your sort of quasi brand ambassadors, and from there your brand grows. Rupesh, I wanted to ask you a question on moat, right? This is a concept that I like to talk about a lot. It's a way a brand defends itself, right? It's a moat is sort of a water body that was around an old fort or a castle that was an additional line of defense. And I think it's very important for brands, right? So how do you think of moats in your business and warding off competition?
So Arjun, hello. So Arjun, when you talk about moat, I think this is also a question that our ancestors have really solved for us, and we are following that same legacy. We are into jewelry business where our average ticket value is standing at 30,000, and selling a 30,000 jewelry piece in the online was not at all easy for us. We started the business in 2013 when technically books and grocery items and some lightweight ticket value items were coming in the market, and we started the brand in 2013. So we were very clear on one thing, that there are people in the market who really want to purchase jewelry, and if we really give them a high quality product and service, definitely the repeat purchase is going to be very, very high for us. So our entire moat stands on customer service. We really want to only focus on one single parameter, which is how far can we go for our customers in fulfilling their requirements, their demands. The second line item that we really touch in our business is about the product. What Vedang already mentioned, that there has to be a differentiator, but the intent has to be very, very high for creating that differentiator, and that will only come with time. It cannot come on day one in any of the product line that we start. But if you keep engineering a product line and keep working on that for a longer period of time, definitely we really find our niche in that particular product. Because when we were there online, we were also competing with the offline players, we were competing with the online players, we were competing with the marketplaces also. But then we found that there is a clear niche that is there in the market about the price points. There is a very clear niche for the product line which is required by the millennials and Gen Zs of the world. So we tried to focus only on that category. And that's how we defined our mode, that customer service and product quality are going to be our major focus. Once we crack both of these properly, then only we will spend huge chunk on the marketing. We have ramped up our revenue in the online in last 1 decade to almost 200 crores and want to grow more in the online. We have started offline, but the moat remains the same, where product quality and service is what we really want to differentiate here.
And Tarun, I wanted to deep dive on not just sort of differentiation from a brand perspective, but like one thing which I really enjoy is every time you guys do a new campaign, you send it at least to some people who you think are like people who support your brand, right? And so I see every single one of your campaigns, and I always see something unique, exciting, or different. Even if you use the same person, the treatment is very different, right? And I always find that the marketing that you guys do has some sort of differentiation or thought process. So while we've talked about differentiation from offering and brand, can you talk to us about how you think about differentiation in marketing and sort of doing this to get the message across to the consumer in a new and innovative manner?
Got it. So I think from a communication or tonality perspective, what we largely try to focus is not following the codes of the category, so to say. I mean, that's where I think the first level of differentiation can start, that, okay, if this is my universe and I have to be different, I'll have to be different than the universe. So break some of the category codes is what we start from. So for example, the way we would show our product application would be a bit more realistic than what you would see in the rosy-eyed ads from our larger peers or whatever, any sized peers, right? So I think authenticity in creating that communication, because internally the chatter becomes कि अगर हम movie बना रहे होंगे, so what kind of a movie would it be, right? Any video which you are trying to do, any communication which you are trying to do, and eventually it comes down to your content should be very different, otherwise people will not engage. You are living in a world which is like the attention span has probably come down to 10% of what it was like 5 years back, right? So in this over communicated world, how do you stop the thumb, catch an eyeball, etc., etc.? For that, you constantly need to think, are you breaking the category codes or not? And are you either creating a shock value, either creating a differentiation from a standpoint of communication? The way you are just using the product, I mean, सब लोग shampoo एक तरीके से लगाते हो. What is our way of doing so? What is that caffeine way of doing things? And in that process, I think the team has kind of created a certain playbook on music, certain playbook on production, certain playbook on the people we use in those videos, and hence those playbooks have been over time evolved. But at the core, it is more like breaking the category codes and not following probably what 10 other guys would be doing.
I think given the clutter of communication that we see as well, and the amount of brands that consumers are exposed to, I think breaking the clutter is important because there are so many times I see an ad and I can sort of never recollect it or remember it, and the brand spending money, right? So I think important point. I wanted to talk about one last theme with you guys before I sort of open up to the audience. It's a theme that that's important to me, and it's something that I spent a lot of time on, and it's building for consumers outside the top 5 or 10 cities, right? And each of us would have lots of consumers in cities that we would have not necessarily believed we would be able to cater to when we started our businesses as well. This consumer has the same level of aspiration, in a lot of cases, a similar income level or disposable income level, but may have different sensibilities or thought processes or ways to sort of engage with them, right? So maybe starting with Vedang, when you think about the consumer, and I used to call it Bharat consumer, but that's not the right term anymore. So the consumer from outside the top 10 cities, how do you think about it?
I don't think the consumer is that different today because of how the internet has evolved and just information communication has evolved. Definitely, it's important to be in that perfect price range, that Goldilocks price range, which is not too expensive. Let me just give an apparel example, which is not too expensive that someone sitting in Indore is going to be like, I can't afford that. But if it's too cheap, apparel is a signaling unit on the body. If it's too cheap, then nobody will wear it, no one will respect it. I think you got to find that Goldilocks where it's just out of reach, people will aspire to get it and they will get it. That's how we look at, in general, just the pricing from a pricing strategy. The beauty of trends, clothing, colors, fits today is that if it's relevant in South Bombay or South Delhi, it's relevant even in Gorakhpur because Instagram and Facebook and Netflix, So that initial problem which used to be there where sensitivities were just so different aren't there anymore. I think the one differentiator that I've seen is that people are more cautious, let's say in tier 2. Trust is a issue that you need to build. Like Amazon spent a lot of money to force and push people to buy online. So getting a celeb helps you go penetrate deeper into tier 2. Also, tier 2 and tier 3 audience is a little more prone to hero worship, so that celebrity does help. So that's, I think, some of the nuances. But today I don't see too much of a difference in the consumer.
Yeah, and I think internet democratized flow of information, right? So the same Nike sneakers that Vedang is wearing, now this will be put on the internet, and then everybody who's going to see this YouTube video will also see those Nike sneakers. Rupesh, I wanted to also sort of specifically for your category talk about price point and design aesthetic as well. Do you see a difference in price sensitivity and design as you go along to different parts of the country?
So jewelry as a category, to be very frank, different cities have a very different taste. People sitting in north have a very different taste than people sitting in the south. Not only in terms of the design aesthetics, but also with respect to the gold purity, diamond purity. So when it comes to jewelry as a category, definitely our pain points are slightly different than the apparel category or the other category, where design changes every 5 kilometers. So a person sitting in Rajasthan has a very different taste of Meenakari and Jadao Kundan taste versus a person sitting in the north has a very clear taste for larger diamonds. So we have very clearly bifurcated our designs according to different regions. There are very community-specific designs on our web store. Similarly, we use the same intelligence when we are opening our offline stores, where every single offline stores have minimum 60 to 70% of the designs very clearly catering to that particular community and that particular region. Because we really want to be a hyper-personalized design player in the market. So we use that intelligence of our online for our offline. We use our pin code intelligence for opening our stores. We use our pin code intelligence for selecting the designs for that store. For example, a store in our Kolkata region will be very clearly marked with all the pin codes that we have on our site. We see the entire category details on the website, that what designs really are added to cart, what categories are added to wish list. And this becomes a very clear assortment for that particular region. And 70% of the design remains from that particular community in that particular region. And 30% are always our best sellers and new arrival that we really want to be there in that market. So that's how we really differentiate in the market with respect to design and price point standpoint, because price points are also very, very different that we have seen in all the markets. And that's how we really want to place our designs and price points.
Yeah, it's very complex.
But like, yeah, it's true because jewelry is my family business. That's what my parents have been doing for 35 years as well. And yeah, I see it from the various customers that come to the store. Sensibilities are different. Tarun, I wanted to ask you on education, right? Like 6-7 years ago, you set out on a journey to basically tell India that caffeine should be a part of cosmetics, and why is coffee really sort of beneficial for your skin and your hair and your body and all of these things, right? And to be honest, when I heard about it the first time, I thought it was a wild thing to do, right? It's just insane. But you know, through the years, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of consumers have adopted this. And so education is the question I wanted to talk to you about. As you have gone through this journey to cater to these millions of customers who initially in 2016 had zero knowledge about this, pretty much. There were very few people in India who even thought or understood that this could even exist. How do you go about education as you go deeper into our country and think about education, about using these kind of products that traditional sense, like Ayurveda, for example, was easy to sell, right? Everybody had Ayurveda, just gave a new format to Ayurveda. But this is a totally new use case. So how do you think about communication and education as you go deeper?
You're nice when you say, when I heard it was wild. उससे भी खराब बातें बोली थी हमें. And we were rejected by what, like 116 angels in our angel round, because it's bizarre.
Were there 160 angels in 2016?
116 ने reject किया था, 16 ने accept किया था. And
So all.
we were making everybody angel who had money. So I didn't know about the ecosystem. पैसा चाहिए था. So I think when we think about education, and this was something which people were telling us that, you know, if coconut was something people knew, it is easy to make a brand around coconut. And if you look at in India, India is an ingredient first country, and we don't realize that कि कोई नीम बेच रहा है, कोई milk बेच रहा है, somebody is selling a coconut, somebody is selling almond. And while we were making the brand, we were trying to over intellectualize the entire stuff कि कौन से graph में हम आएंगे, कौन से quadrant में होंगे, so on and so forth. And then we went back to basics, that if at all it is a bizarre idea to do, 1 lakh लोग तो होंगे. And if you multiply with an average order value, decent outcome. And then you will think about कि अच्छा 1 lakh से जैसे और भी लोग होंगे, and then you start finding the right customer set. I think over time, after doing a lot of stuff, what we realized is that India is not a broad brush information system. So if haldi works, I mean, people know haldi works, but think about haldi's penetration, it's supremely low, right? So when we thought about that, education ही होता तो फिर शायद सारे हल्दी के brand बन चुके होते हैं. And hence, whether how integral is education to us, we started questioning it. Then we said, education banta hoga ya to institution se, so I get my knowledge of engineering from where I've graduated from, or in our case, or the social cause, which is, in our case, DIYs. So we went back to institutions and we went back to DIYs. And we started looking at how many people are searching about coffee ka product, how many people are, and you know, a lot of people would know it, that coffee ko ghar mein use karke, back in mehndi mein use hoti hai coffee to kind of hold the color, right? And back in South and Northeast, people wash their hair with. And so India is a country where you have zillions of packets of micro information. And as mCaffeine, we just tapped on to some of them in our initial stages. And then over time, we realized that janta बहुत ज़्यादा है. If you look at a coffee body scrub DIY, 10 million views हैं. तो किसी ने तो देखा होगा. And we just need to figure out where these people are. And in institutions, body scrub has been long-standing a product in spas and salons, right? So we started like very, very focused on these information packets and we started double clicking on them. And over time, when we collated them, we realized that, okay, ये थोड़ा सा बड़ा है. And then at this point of time, last year we served about 1.2 crores unique consumers, right? And we said, this is becoming large. So now we have to kind of make sure that we don't follow the same playbook, we learn it, juice it, and we create more feathers around it. So now our communication is more direct as we are reaching to people which are slightly different from the kind of audience we would have catered to. But it was very, very small efforts, and then over 5 years when we collated it, it looked like a ठीक ठाक जनता है भारत में, मतलब 2.5-3 करोड़ लोग हैं जो जानते हैं कि कैफीन क्यों सही है.
Thank you so much to all of you for being a part of this and listening to us. I had a great time moderating this panel. I learned a lot and I hope you guys did as well. So thank you to ET Retail as well for hosting us.